Artificial lighting in Unreal Engine is what we're going to be talking about now, which means that we're going to actually delete all of these other lights, or we can just hide them for now. And we will move inside. Actually, I'm going to turn this on so I see what I'm doing. And I'm going to again use a bookmark. So I'm going to set the bookmark in here, Control 1. And then I'm going to go outside and set another bookmark, Control 2. So I can, by clicking 1 and 2 on my keyboard, I can go back and forth between these two environments. And when I'm in here, I'm going to turn that off and add some artificial lights. And the way that we do that is by, again, clicking the quick Add Project button here. And under lights, we can see we already work with the directional light. We don't need one of those. But we have point lights, rectangular lights, and then the skylight, also a type of light that's already in our scene. So it's mainly these three. If we bring one in, we start with the point light. Very straightforward. You see what it does. It's a light that radiates light rays in all directions from a single point, which is quite expensive because the amount of light rays is more than a directional light. We can see here that it's by default very bright, very strong. And also we should add this to another folder, keep things clean. A few quick things about the different settings for these. Obviously the intensity, very straightforward. We can make it more dim. Then also the color, we can change that. And then we have something called the attenuation radius, which is basically how far we want this light to cast light. And if we go out to other bookmark, to 2, we will see here, I'm going to turn on the directional lights, we can see again that it has this kind of big sphere around it. If we minimize this, it gets smaller or bigger, and this is basically how far we want the light rays to go. So we can, if we go back in, we turn off our directional light, we can, if we make it very small, it basically doesn't touch anything. So if we go up to this point, it will touch only the ceiling and the floor, and now it's touching more of the room. And this is useful because if you add a lot of lights, which you're probably going to be having in your project, and if many of them start to overlap, then the computational load will be very expensive. So make sure that the lights only touches an area that they actually need to touch. Similarly, as before, we have this kind of source radius, which is dealing with the softness of the light. We can undo that for now. Or that was the attenuation radius. We put that back. Yeah. And a few other settings here. I'm just going to look back at my document for a second, see that I'm not missing anything. Yes. And so that's point light, and we're going to go ahead and add a spotlight, and we can move that to the other side of the room maybe. Quite similar in or straightforward in a similar way as the point light. It is a spotlight, so we have the strength of the light. We also have attenuation radius, which in this case is more like a cone. You can see that the area that it's affecting. In this case, we also have an inner angle cone for where the light will be brighter, and an outer one for where the light will be weaker. We can go ahead and delete that, and then look at the last one, which is the rectangular lights, which is quite useful to both kind of create a light area that's very specific to one area without this kind of round spotlight effect. But it's also quite useful to mimic daylight. So it's quite common that you might rotate this into position and put this in a window. In this case there's more than one window, so it doesn't make sense, but and then change the size of it to fit roughly the size of a window, which can be quite useful. There's a few other settings here that we're not going to be really looking into for this tutorial. But I wanted to show one more thing, which is obviously the fact that we have here this point light, which casts this blue light. And if we click G, you will see what the actual image looks like without all of this interface. And we have basically a light that's coming from nowhere. So unless you want that this sort of effect is in that sense kind of abstract, if you have a space with a light source that should be visible, then you also need a prop of some kind to make it look like the light is coming from that prop. And in many cases you might download something that has already a material that illuminates light, but we're going to be looking into how to create a material that emits light. And so for this we're going to, let's say we just add a sphere here to make it simple. So we go into here and we add a shape, a sphere, we drag it in, and I'm just going to put it roughly where the light is. And you will notice here that it's kind of not the most fun thing to try to align objects. So what we can do instead is we can click on one object and go into the general settings, and then under location we can right click and click copy. So we're basically copying all of these settings, and then click on another object and go to general and paste, and it will put it in the exact same place. This is obviously quite big for a light source. Maybe we make it a little bit smaller, and you can see here I was trying to scale it, but it actually is only scaling it in one direction. This is kind of a side topic, but I'll show you how to fix that. I'm going to undo. Obviously we can, as we said before, click on the scale button and use the white central cube there to scale it uniformly, or we can simply click on this lock button here, and then now we can scale it uniformly. So let's say we make it a bit smaller, and we should all know by now how to make a material, right? So we go into the content browser, we go under the folder that we created called materials, we right click and we click on material, m_glow, or we can call it light 01 maybe. We open it, we make it a bit smaller so we can also see the scene at the same time. And by default, again, we have this panel here, and if we look for something called emissive or light or something like this, you can see that we can't actually, oh, there it is, emissive color. And there's a few ways to do this. We can try just add a color, and we make it white, and again, to add a color value we hold 3 on our keyboard for 3 values, RGB, and we click anywhere, click there to increase that, and we pull that into emissive and see what happens. You can see that it looks like it's creating light. In this case though, it's actually, let's try and add it and see what happens. I'm gonna save this, open the content browser, we drag it in. Okay, we click G now, and we see that, yeah, it's glowing clearly, and it's kind of adding that effect. If we, for instance, if we move, we're gonna maybe we make a copy of this so that we can see the difference. We can actually see already here, if we hide this light source there, that they are casting light, just simply as that, and they are actually illuminating the world as they are. So you can actually use materials to illuminate the world itself without point lights. They have their limitations. One is that they only illuminate when they're actually in the view. So if we turned our camera to look this way and then this way, I'm gonna hide this one also. No, actually it works. Yes, sorry. But what we're not controlling yet is the brightness. And I'm going to show you how to put in a value and a color to be able to control both of these together. And actually, we only need one, so I'm going to delete that one. And I'm going to open up this material again, which you can open it from the content browser, or you can just click the material that we have assigned to this object in the detail panel, and it will open up the dialog box. So this is already as white as it can get, so we can't change the brightness actually in this way. So we need something called a multiplier. Again, you can right click and to get the menu and then type in what we're looking for, multiply, or we can simply hold in M on our keyboard and click anywhere. And this will allow us to basically bring in two inputs into one unit and then output them together. So we want one color. We want to connect that to the emissive like that. And then basically we have the same thing that we had before. And then if we click 1, which is just a value constant from 0 up to whatever we want, and we connect that to the B, then you'll see that there is no emission now because there is the value 0. So if we click 1, you see that it's increased. If we click 100, you'll see that now it's very, very, very bright. So we try and save now. You'll see that it is extremely bright, too bright for us even to see what's going on. So let's go back to, we can put 2 or something like that. Maybe even that's too bright. And you'll see that like when we make changes, if we want to make this a colored light, we'll click OK. It's not actually updating. That's because we need to save every single time that we have made a change to a material. And this works maybe as if you're a moment where you're kind of testing things out. Maybe also you want to test to see what it's like to have a texture illuminate instead of a color. I held in T on my keyboard and clicked to make a texture sample. I'm just going to select something random here, maybe this one, and we connect this one instead. We'll see now that we have that texture bringing out the light, which is quite fun. We get this red and green just like we have there in the pattern. I'm going to see what happens if we connect it to the base color as well. If we get the actual light, that doesn't really change much. We can barely see it because it's illuminating so strongly. If you want to be able to change, let's say, the color of the light or the texture of the light or the strength of the light in a more fast way, let's say you have many different objects with many different kinds of lights or other qualities of materials, then we can create an instance instead. I'm going to break this link, by the way, here, which we do by right-clicking, break this link, so we get back to where we were. And any of these settings can be turned into a parameter for an instance. Might not make a lot of sense currently, but let me show you. If we click on this, we want to be able to change the color and the value, the strength in this case. So we right click, convert to parameter, and we call this color. And we want the value also, and we convert to parameter, and we call this or glow maybe. All right, we save, we close, and we go look at that material. So this is now what's called a parent material. This, like, the settings for this affects all of the children to this material that we're going to be creating. This is the kind of language that is used in the software, not what I'm making up. We right click and we go to create material instance. It will create a copy. You can name it. If you know this is going to be a green one, you can name it green. If we attach this one to the object, you can double check that it actually worked. Yes, it's called m_light_01 instance. And if we open that one instead, you see that the settings now looks very different. We actually have very few settings. And some of the settings that we have are the two ones that we just created. So glow and color. So now I can change the color live, and it actually updates as I'm doing it, which is very useful. And same thing with the brightness. I can turn it off. I can make it very bright. And this is very useful both for the speed of making these adjustments, but it's also very useful because any of these parameters here we can actually animate later when we make films, when we make video clips, so that we can actually have different kinds of objects light up and create effects or change the colors or even change the texture. I'm gonna save that and close it. And the last thing I'm going to show regarding lighting, I'm gonna maybe bring in or turn those lights on again that we had earlier. Or did we delete them? Oh, there it is. I'm gonna move this somewhere else in the scene. Is something called a post-processing volume, and this will basically allow us to change the effects that things like lights have in the scene without changing the actual lights. And we get that, like all other things, from the quick add button, and under visual effects, post-processing volume, it's by default this size. And basically, if the camera is inside here, we will see that effect. And let's make a quick change. Let's see if we go under color grading, and we can go to global and saturation. And let's see here, let's bring it all the way down. We can see that nothing happens. It's because we're not in the post-processing volume. If we go inside, you can see that now everything is black and white. If we go out, color again. So this is also a useful way to make experiments and to do tests. We can obviously make a copy of this and have several different ones with different kinds of effects. If we want, which we usually want, the post-processing volume to affect the entire world, we don't need to scale it. It can be any size. We just need to go and tick this button, infinite extent, unbound. If we click that, now it affects the entire world, no matter where we are. And we're not going to be going into all the details here, but here basically, as we just did under color grading, you can change the saturation. So we turned it off, but you can obviously bring it way up. I'm going to go back to 1 and turn it off. In fact, we can change the colors and saturations of the shadows. We can change the type of film. We can film effects, global illumination, path tracing, all sorts of different effects. And I think this will conclude the final introduction to lighting.